Try this again.
Hey, all you motherfuckers.
Godzilla versus Kong. What's a king to a god?
All right.
We almost found that out.
All right. So, what's up, Freaks and Geeks? It's your boy Rick Dunn. We are back again. Bloody Nerd Podcast. I'm here with a couple of my nerd friends. We're going to talk about the Godzilla versus Kong spectacle that was the movie. And I got some of my sweaty friends here. We got Graven the Raven Wolf himself, the Professor, Mr. Sean Anthony, Chasing Horror, Mr. Chase, with his double D's on his forehead. And we're going to get into this Godzilla real quick. First things first, like Sean said, what was the layout you wanted to do? How you lay it out? Perfectly, laid it out perfectly. Was it the good,
I said
the bad,
likes,
the good, the bad?
Likes, dislikes, and profoundly ridiculous.
The likes, dislikes, and the profoundly ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, let's jump into the likes, dislikes. I'll go first. Likes, dislikes. The thing that I liked the most, obviously, the one thing that I'm sure we'll all agree on was the most likable thing about the movie was just the monsters fighting each other. That was the most likable thing to be had in the movie. You know, just obviously. Outside of that, oh man, anything else that I liked about the movie? It is what it is. It's definitely a popcorn movie. It's definitely one of those things where it's kind of easy to watch, but it's also, I don't know. I'm getting into the dislikes area, but they definitely found a way to make it harder to even watch a popcorn movie in some instances of the movie. But yeah, for me, the easiest part of the movie was just the monster fight scenes. Graven, what about you?
All right, so we got likes, dislikes, and the completely ridiculous, right?
Just go with the likes.
You can
right
start
now.
with the likes. Yeah.
Likes right now. I would say likes right now, like you said, we want to see the Titans. I still am very much enjoyed with the look and feel of this current Godzilla. I like the way he looks. I like the way he feels. I like the way Kong looks. I like the way he feels as well. I love all that. The fights were good to some extent. I appreciated some of the fights, some of the environments. The choreography could have been better in areas, but the environments were beautiful. Some of the additional characters that were side characters in this was great. Mechagodzilla's design was fun, I feel like, in a lot of ways. I would have loved to seen more. I might be a little spoiler here, but I would say Mecha King Ghidorah rather than Mechagodzilla, but we'll talk about that later.
It's all spoilers, brother. It's all spoilers.
It's all spoilers? All right. And then I love the Hollow Earth feel that's happening with this film. I love the backstory of this, and I think we should have got more of that. Love that. Love the idea that there's more depth with all that idea. So, I mean, yeah, that's stuff I loved likes about that. Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Chase.
Well, I guess I only have 3 likes about the movie. We got to see monsters fight. The CGI was great. But the thing that made the movie interesting for me is Hollow Earth. I wish the whole movie could have been there. I wish I could have saw a giant fight scene there with Godzilla and Kong. And it's really hard to think of liking things about the movie.
That's a little spoiler, a little foreshadowing for where Chase is going to end up in this one. All right, Sean, what about you?
Well, Chase, you could have had a Godzilla, Kong fight in Hollow Earth if Godzilla slid down the hole that he burrowed.
Yeah. That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the one thing the film was missing, I guess.
Well, the one thing.
I'll be a little bit more positive. Anytime you have the 2 most famous Titans in the MonsterVerse going at it, that's just fun to watch on screen. It seemed to me like there was more action. If we're talking about the 4 films in this MonsterVerse from Godzilla 2014, Skull Island, King of Monsters, this one seemed like at least it felt like it had more action-packed scenes, and it felt like the action scenes were extended. They were longer. Yeah. And I think that's what everybody's digging about the movie so far.
I agree.
I love the Hollow Earth part of the movie. I do agree with you guys. I'm getting a sense that could have been flushed out a little bit more, or we could have had more screen time in that. the way that they got there, I think, was a little ridiculous, but we'll talk about that later.
Of course.
And overall, it was just a good-looking film.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just a very good-looking film. The cinematography in this movie was outstanding.
I agree.
The destruction was unparalleled, man. Like, the way they knocked down buildings and just threw each other through buildings and stuff like that, that was fun to see.
It was great.
But I definitely have some issues, and I'm sure we all do. But I'll let you guys go ahead with that, because I definitely want to talk about. I want to get to the profoundly ridiculous too eventually, so we'll get into that.
Well, since we talked about the good, I'll let Chase lead it off with the dislikes.
Well, the biggest thing is the Godzilla's at the beginning of the title, but we don't hardly see any Godzilla. It's more of a sequel for Kong. You get to like Kong more, and the last two movies about Godzilla build him up to be this hero. But in the movie, they immediately turn him to a bad guy. They don't even explain why he's doing it. You're just supposed to assume. And that was really, as being a Godzilla fan, kind of hurt. Because we got
very much.
Really help people. Kong, I love, in Hong Kong, I love seeing him jumping around buildings. I wish I could have saw more of that. We actually got to see an ape. And, like, I guess I'm saying I wish I could see more of that stuff. And, like, Kong Skull Island had a way of having you feel for the characters. Because even if it's a popcorn flick, you need to feel something for the characters.
Of course.
So these characters, besides deaf girls, were just thrown there, and we were supposed to like them because they were there, which I don't get. And you introduce this kingdom for Kong all over, and you don't say nothing else about that. Like,
Okay. All right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you sound a lot of the points you bring up sound very similar to what I've heard Sean say in conversation.
Team Godzilla.
Yeah. Graven, what do you think?
Dislikes on the movie. A lot of what Chase is saying, I agree with. A lot of what everybody's saying, I agree with. I do want to just, before I say this, and the dislikes, is that, let's be honest, this movie went over very well for people. There's a lot of people, the general consistency of the views, everyone's loving it, and that's great. We want people to love it, because we do want to see more King Kong, and we want to see more Godzilla. I think everybody in this conversation wants to see that. We love these characters, so we really want to see them, and we did enjoy that we did get this, because we could have not got this at all. So to have something is great, better than having nothing at all. But as far as the dislikes go with me, I agree. My biggest issue listen, I want to see the monsters fight. And yes, the human character component doesn't have to be front and center all the time. I'm a firm believer that if you have good characters, like even the good monsters, they're characters, they're personas. So if they have a chance to speak and be involved, let them. And they build all this up very quickly. They did something very smart with this film, and I want people to understand that listening to this review. They did something very simple yet very smart with Kong. They gave us a chance to connect with him in a way that has never been done before, with the little deaf girl and having her connect with him, and he could vocalize his opinion by speaking in sign language. You lost a whole opportunity to have your fan base, the viewer, connect with him and understand how he feels, why he hurts, where he's going, what he's thinking while he's fighting, and make you feel for him. And you could have all done it between him connecting with this little girl and having another character maybe understand and translate and know what the little girl is saying as well with this doctor that's with her. So we didn't get that. That was horrendously sidelined for a few comments of, I want to be home, or things like that. So that was, I completely thought they dropped the ball there. That was horrendous. Having other characters being forced perspective, Millie Bobby Brown's character didn't need to be in this film. Her dad was no longer even being utilized. He didn't know half the time what he was doing. He was just basically there in the background to say, hey, we connect to King of Monsters with this gentleman. That you have a villain that you create to create Mechagodzilla, and he's your, like we've talked about this with Rick before, he's your average kind of Bond villain. Great character there, but a lot of this stuff wasn't interested in regards to how he was handled or treated. He was rushed. I'm not going to be afraid to say this. I definitely travel a line of some type of conspiracy understanding sometimes. I like to look at those things. And you have a character here that is a joke of a conspiracy understanding type person who's just made a joke in the whole film. And I think that was extremely, extremely not needed. It was extremely cartoonish, and it was an insult to anybody who has intellect that's trying to understand different depths of things like this happening even in the real world to some degree. So that was an insult. I can go on. There's a lot of stuff that I disliked about this film. I can try to extrapolate good things from the film, but there's more than just that. But I'll leave it with that. Characters were not needed. You lost the opportunity to really connect with Kong and Godzilla, for that matter, because Kong could have been translating what Godzilla was saying to the little girl. If he's emotionally, instinctually picking up what Godzilla's saying to him, screaming and yelling, or instinctually, Kong could have connected the universe, the viewer, to say, hey, this is where Godzilla's coming from, and this is what's happening. But hey, there you go. So I'll leave it at that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that. There could have been a scene where Kong had a moment where he, like that last scene where they both stood up at the end and they approached each other one last time, and then Godzilla turned around and walked away. It could have been a moment where the girl looked at him and said, what did he say? And he could have been like, he said this. For one moment, you actually got into Godzilla's head. It could have been some really interesting shit Godzilla could have said to him. He could have been like, he said this. And be like, oh, shit, wow. That's
or he understood
simple.
what he understood from what Godzilla was, that sort of head nod. Because I think there was twice in the movie where Godzilla gave Kong the head nod, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that could have been, that's true. That could have been a really interesting thing. What do you think, Sean?
I want to respond to two things that Graven said before I get into my thing. Kyle Chandler's character was completely uncharacteristic with what they built up with King of Monsters.
I agree.
His whole point of that movie was he understood how animals acted in a certain habitat and what their response was going to be and their instincts and everything. And Millie Bobby Brown, his daughter, was telling him, listen, there's a reason why Godzilla's being provoked. We need to get to the bottom of that. And then he goes and he contradicts himself and he says, well, we have to figure out what's why Godzilla's killing people. And then when she first approaches the subject to him, she goes, what you're saying is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
How can you, this guy's a PhD level. He's at the top of, he's probably well published, written books on his subject. And he just the character just kind of ignores all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have a problem with that. I'm glad you brought that up. There was the thing you said about the signing, I think was a great, profound point. They really did drop the ball on that. One of my issues with the film was when Kong actually signed to the girl, and when they were on the tanker that was carrying them or whatever, she was shocked, right? The doctor that was supposed to be the Kong whisperer, she didn't know, and there was a line in the movie where she said, I studied him for 10 years and I didn't know he signed. And the little girl said, well, he didn't want you to know. Well, excuse me if I'm wrong, but he was in a huge containment facility. There were cameras all around.
Right.
Anytime Kong signed with this little girl, you mean to tell me that this little girl snuck off for, however amount of time and signed with Kong and there was no cameras that picked up their communication back and forth? That was profoundly ridiculous, right? Which I'm skipping ahead, but that to me was a fatal mistake in terms of the direction of the film. And I love what you said about they could have used the fact that he signed to communicate more.
Yeah.
Less human dialogue and more communication from Kong. That would have been really good. Just to take it from the top, this was innately a Kong film. Okay, and I sat and thought about this for a minute or two. You can make the case that it should have been, because Godzilla got 2 full movies and Kong got 1. So now this is sort of bringing it back full circle to put the focus back on Kong. However, if that's the case, don't name it Kong versus Godzilla. King Kong got the majority, and I've read countless reviews and I've tried to research how many, and I guess this will come out later on, how many minutes of film time did Godzilla get versus King Kong? And there's going to be a huge discrepancy about this. Which brings me to the director of this movie, Adam Weingart. Now, he comes from the Peter Jackson school. Okay, so Peter Jackson, there's an article that Peter Jackson tapped him a long time ago after his King Kong film, and he saw, I think, a film, You're Next, by, I think it was an early screening of the You're Next film that Weingart did. And Peter Jackson, after seeing that film, was interested in having Adam Weingart do a follow-up to his King Kong movie. And Weingart says he was going to name the film just Skull Island, but somehow the rights of Kong got bought over from Universal to Warner Brothers. So he was kind of pushed out because they wanted to start this MonsterVerse, and they wanted to sort of eventually get to this point, right? So to me, again, everybody has some bias, but this speaks to the directional decisions made about this film. There's a reason why this film is so much a Kong film versus a Godzilla film. And a lot of the complaints that I have speak to the fact that I don't think there was more of an interest in having us connect with Kong, humanizing Kong, than there was with Godzilla.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the fact that all the characters from King of Monster that we followed around on that, that sort of like a huge stealth bomber ship or whatever, most of those characters weren't in this movie. Okay? It was only Millie Bobby Brown, it was the father, even the Asian woman with the twin who was supposed to have sort of like a telepathic connection with Godzilla. She wasn't even in the film anymore, right? So there was a lot of decisions made, I feel like, that most of the characters, most of the meat and the dialogue was all the characters on the Kong side. Okay? Let me just get through my little list here, right? The decision of to transport Kong by water, okay?
Oh gosh, don't get me started.
Like that, I mean, again, you guys could jump in when you want to, but listen, this guy comes to the Kong Whisperer. Now, first of all, there was a storm that took out all the people of Skull Island.
Which was
there was
horrible. That was a horrible thing.
Which is horrible, right? And they said that Kong rescued the little girl, so now they have this connection because Kong is like her protector and everything. At which point did they build this huge facility around Kong that he didn't want to be in anymore, right? I mean, I know they put him to sleep a couple times. So did they just keep putting him to sleep while they built this mega facility around him?
And we talked about that too. I forgot, was it me and Sean or was it me and Graven? We talked about that. Yeah, it's like, okay, so where did they find a tranquilizer strong enough to put down what? How big is Kong?
Like 300 feet, something like that.
He's like 400 feet.
Yeah,
something like that.
What kind of
something
tranquilizer
crazy.
just puts him down? And like just no problem. Where'd they get that from? They could have talked about that too.
Yeah, and then on top of it, how do you think I mean, we're trying to get scientific with this, which I guess a little bit we should, because let's think there are some scientific understandings with the way this movie is built with some of the technology.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, like Kong would have drowned that boat just rolling over the boat in the water when he was in the water and chained up. Like, don't get me started about that.
I mean,
boat was not big enough to carry him.
Yeah, my thought when Godzilla and Kong were both on the
bro,
Navy vessel.
It should have sunk.
I was thinking, how realistic was that, right? And I just, again, just to bring this up, this is a popcorn film.
Yes,
we didn't go in thinking that this was, Pacino and De Niro in Heat. But there comes a divide where, and I say this with Marvel films all the time, entertain me, but don't insult me while you're entertaining me, right? Yeah. Now, this is definitely a movie where you have to suspend a certain degree of logic. I mean, we have giant titans roaming the earth, right?
Yeah, we're there to have fun.
But at the same time, there's a fine line between how you use the human beings in a movie to connect to the next scene, to give you a better understanding of why these monsters are raging at each other, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, yes, we're supposed to dispense of certain real, like, this is not real. We're in a world full of these huge titans, but gravity still exists, right? Up is still up, down is still down. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to create a world where the physics don't matter, then you have to set that up. You know what I'm saying? You have to give some kind of setup to say, in this world, for some reason, physics don't matter. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't do that, then that's when you start to get disrespectful. That's when you start to be insulting to you know, the average intellect of a person, because you know, dispending my my belief on there being a 400-foot monkey jumping around. It's another thing when he's leapfrogging to ships, like he's leapfrogging. Come on, bro. It was like he's jumping up and landing on another ship, and it's not sinking the ship.
All that is I was telling Rick, all that is somebody in the writing room, in the creative context of the concept room, was like, we need to find good environments that would be really unique to put these two to fight. And so let's put it on the water, because Godzilla's in the water. Let's figure out how he's going to survive off of that.
And he's at a huge advantage. Godzilla is on
scene, right? This is exactly what it is. This is something that I think Sean will agree with a whole lot. It seemed like the whole movie was the way they did the movie was, let's think of really cool places for them to fight. And then after they thought of the places, then they built a storyline around that.
Right.
Instead of creating a story and letting it flow and weave, they said first, let's come up with 3 major places for them to fight, or 3 you know, major places for there to be a spectacle. And then let's build a story around that kind of interweaves it through.
Yeah.
You know, because that's
I will say I enjoyed that scene. You know, I discussed the scene originally with Rick, and I thought that, like, when I first saw the scene, I was disappointed because it seems like King Kong is always fighting Godzilla off. He's kicking him in his face, he's headbutting him, and Godzilla doesn't really get in much hits, right?
Right.
But when I watched the scene again, I realized that Kong was completely overmatched in that environment, and Godzilla almost drowned him. Like, he almost drowned. So,
Kong wasn't worried about fighting. He was worried about getting to safety and maybe fighting then.
Absolutely. So it was sort of like he was just defending himself the whole time. So I understood that scene better, and I enjoyed it better. Getting back to the decision to transport him, this guy comes and he says, hey, listen, you know, we need to do this because there's this power source. He hasn't even been explained what this power source is and how it's going to help. Okay, that hasn't been flushed out or explained to him at all. But he goes now and he convinces her within maybe the first meeting.
Yeah, minutes.
Within 2-3 minutes and a couple sentences, she tells him, if we move Kong, Godzilla's gonna come for him. It's gonna be, you know, chaotic. He tries at it again. She goes, okay, fine, right? Because she looks up at the dome and she realizes Kong doesn't want to be here either anymore. So let's do this. So who was the genius that thought Godzilla, you know, he pretty much patrols the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
The whole Pacific Rim is his territory. They say, oh no, we're gonna sail, and this is how the movie justifies it. We're gonna sail around where Godzilla usually patrols. He doesn't frequent those areas.
But that kind of makes sense if you think about it, because with sharks, there's shark frenzies where there's certain where people will try to stay away from sharks.
Sharks have
so that's
areas,
logical.
That part is logical.
But this is a giant reptile.
Yeah, but that part is logical. But she contradicts that because she literally says Kong is on Skull Island and it's protecting him from Godzilla. If we take him away from this island, Godzilla will come for him. Like they hone in on each other. Like fucking.
Well, that's what I was getting to.
You know what I'm saying? Like
that's
they're
what
like homing signals. So steering clear of Godzilla's areas doesn't mean shit. He's literally coming for Kong.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna get to that, Chase, because what you're saying is logical. You're right, absolutely. In theory, the way animals behave typically, but in these movies, again, you kind of have to suspend some of that to a degree because Godzilla and Kong, they pick up on each other in some way, right?
Two alphas.
Yeah, 2 alphas, and you talk about thousands of miles of globe between them, and they could still kind of sense where the other one is or whatever. So I thought I actually liked that aspect of it. I like the scene of that. I'm going to go back to the director real quick, right? Just to kind of get to another point. I heard him in an interview, and he said that when he thinks of King Kong, he thinks of like an 80s action hero, like Bruce Willis and Die Hard and stuff.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of the movie, the movie begins and ends with Kong, and it starts off. And Rick brought this to my attention. It starts off like how a action hero would be. He gets up, he brushes his teeth, he's a normal guy, just like any one of us. That's how he presents him in this movie. Now, if you wanted to do that, I'm fine with that, right? And I'll put my bias out there. I'm definitely Team Zilla, but it's not to say that I don't like King Kong as well. But if you want to do that and make this more of a Kong movie, I'm fine with that. But I think you also, and jump in here, Rick, because we discussed this, they lost the opportunity to explain the science behind what was provoking Godzilla. And that could have built up more of a storyline as to, why is Godzilla acting out of his usual typical frame from King of Monsters, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This is kind of where goes back a little, touches on what Graven was talking about too with the sign language. They lost certain aspects of the movie where they could have given us more thoughts, more in-depth thoughts about where the monsters were coming from. But yeah, the same thing with Godzilla. They missed on an opportunity. They just made it out to be like Godzilla was just going AWOL. You know what I'm saying? Like he was just pissed off and just burning everybody down. You know what I'm saying? Like he almost like he couldn't find what he was looking for.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And they never really explained to us that they were fucking with him. You know what I'm saying? They kind of left. They put it on the screen because there's a scene where they have the base, the Apex base in Pensacola. And where Godzilla comes out of the water and attacks the base in Pensacola, and then the conspiracy theory guy goes down into the basement, and you see, after Godzilla attacks, you see this spherical thing sitting in the middle of the room. You know what I'm saying? And the guy's like, "What's that?" And so it's obvious that that's a thing. Something about that thing is important. But they don't go any further. It's just like
never.
There's a thing in the room, and then all of a sudden they cut away from it. You know what I'm saying? And you don't see it again. You never see it again.
Until the end, right? I think there was when Mechagodzilla was full power and they turned on Mechagodzilla and you saw the eye come red. Godzilla was on a certain path, and then he sort of he made a turn to go make a beeline for Hong Kong.
Yeah,
I
think the spherical thing that was in the Apex base was the eyeball, but
okay,
that's just a guess. I have no idea if that's what it was.
You're not sure about that. I thought that's what it was as well.
Yeah, right? That's what I'm saying. They don't give you. They show you the spherical thing, and then they never come back to it and explain it.
Right.
It just goes away, and you're left to assume at that point.
Yeah.
And so again, the motivation of Godzilla was left out there. Like they give you so much more about Kong's motivation and what he wants to do, and they just leave Godzilla just kind of out there, like he's just operating off of
he's just raging.
Pure instinct.
That's all he is.
And he's just a rage monster, and he's operating on pure instinct. He has no intellect at all.
Yeah.
Chase brought up a great point in the beginning, whereas the intelligence of Kong, they could have fleshed that out more. I think again, you get the sense from the first Godzilla movie and the King of Monsters, there's an intelligence to Godzilla as well. And there's sort of an instinctual thing where he doesn't want to hurt humans directly. It's sort of like, if I'm walking in grass and, I step on ants kind of thing, right? There's a certain, just inherent intelligence that comes with these monsters. If we're going to root for them in these movies. If not, just make them just these, blind, mass murderers or whatever, even though, that's what ends up happening, right?
Well, yeah, especially Hong Kong. The one thing they did do in the movie was they touched on the fact that Zilla only fights things that he deems is
a
threat to him. If he deems that there's no threat, then he doesn't waste his time. You know what I'm saying? And that was Graven. We talked about this the other day, and I talked to Sean about this today, and it made sense after me and Sean talked about it. But when me and Graven talked about it, it didn't make any sense. We were talking about the scene in the ocean where they were like, shut off all the boats, and Godzilla won't harm us anymore. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, what does that make? That makes no fucking sense. But it does make sense in a sense, and when you think about it from once they shut off all the boats and they played dead, he looked at them as a whole. as
Right.
a whole, they were no longer a threat to him.
A threat to him.
You know what I'm saying?
It's
Because all the boats were
like
dead.
they're rolling over and showing their vulnerable spots.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
once they all shut their ships off, but see, this is the thing. We had to dig for that. Like I feel like they should have given us when the guy told them, hey, shut the ships off, and the commander, the black guy, was like, yeah, I hope you know what you're doing. He could have easily said, this is why I told you to do that. Because now he doesn't see us as a threat anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he'll go away. Oh wow, that would have been like, that's awesome.
Well, they did that in King of Monsters when Godzilla comes in the beginning of the film and he's underwater and he's scoping out the base underwater and they're like, shut everything off. He doesn't need to know that we're basically not fired up, ready to go. Turn the guns off, turn everything off, and and he basically said, look, I see you, I got you.
Yeah.
Something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You better calm down. You know what I mean? So it's like he says that in King of Monsters, if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
But we don't get that. We have to assume that it's the same thing happening here. I just thought it was ridiculous because you got Kong laid out on the deck of this carrier, and he's like barely awake, and you're just waiting for for Zilla to go. You stay down.
It was like literally
Don't
a
do
moment.
Oh, you
where
down?
Zilla was
Okay.
like,
If you think about it,
I
Kong,
got you.
technically, Kong is nowhere near Godzilla's equal. He doesn't have the armor. He has the intelligence, but he doesn't have. He doesn't have anything else that could. Because Godzilla, because of his size, he already beats him in power.
Oh, absolutely.
So technically, I was thinking that how they sense each other because they're both alphas. That means Godzilla has to assume Kong is his equal already because they're sensing each other. When in reality, Kong is nowhere near King Ghidorah, so Godzilla should not be able to sense him if he doesn't care.
Yep.
It's true. I mean, they basically set it up that these two have been their species has been fighting each other for thousands and thousands, if not millennia. Right. They've been fighting for probably as old as the Earth is. Why? I think the only reason why is because of Kong's intellect. I think where Godzilla is not an idiot. Godzilla is not a stupid, rage monster.
Right.
But I do think that Kong's intellect is by far more than Godzilla's. And that's the only thing that gives Kong
puts him on equal par.
Smarts.
That's the only thing that puts Kong on a level where he can even come toe to toe with Godzilla and survive, let alone have a chance of winning, which I don't think is possible.
Well, reptilian brain versus mammalian brain.
Yeah.
You have two different things you're dealing with there. At some point when anger starts, the reptilian brain takes over, and before you know it, you close in on what you're actually doing, and you lock out abilities to decipher, and be quicker on what you're doing.
Which they have proven of Godzilla. If you pay attention to the other two Godzilla films, when Godzilla's not angry or fighting anything, he watches where he steps. But once he saw King Ghidorah and King of Monsters, he didn't care there was people there. He was just charging. He could care less about being the saver.
Absolutely. I mean, Godzilla's always been this unique mix of an anti-hero.
Yeah.
In some of the previous films, he's sometimes he's the bad guy, sometimes he's the savior, sometimes he goes both ways in the same film. The director of this movie even said that Godzilla is much stronger than Kong. He's more powerful than Kong. So again, this is why we're getting sort of like this underdog story from his vantage point, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of, you're getting sort of like David versus Goliath.
Yeah, Rocky and Apollo.
Apollo Creed, or Rocky against the Russian, Rocky IV kind of thing. So I think everybody kind of understands that. I think also Godzilla has some unique abilities, again, that I don't think were fully fleshed out in this film.
No, not compared to the last one.
Right, and I don't know why. Again, Godzilla has pinpoint accuracy to hit, from his back, leaning against a building to hit that axe, to heat it up, to help Kong defeat Mechagodzilla. But he can't have pinpoint accuracy when it comes to hitting Ghidorah or hitting Kong. And there was one time in this film where I was glad that they showed the power of his beam or the atomic breath, because it singed a part of Kong.
Yeah.
And you know, that was it for me right there. I was like, you know what? If he hits Kong full in the chest, he's done.
Oh, it's gone. He's gone.
Yeah, he's gonna burn a hole
Right?
straight through his chest. Yeah.
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 Just to, I'm still getting through my list here, so I want to bring this up too, and I want to know what you guys think of this, which is the whole Apex storyline, right? Just again with this power source, they're able to sort of convince this guy and you know the scientist and her whole organization or whatever that we need to get to this power source. They never explain what that is and how it's going to be good for humanity. And they convince people to do that. Not alone, but, and Rick, you brought this up earlier, the cost, how rich is this company, man?
Seriously.
Is this $1 trillion company? The cost that it would take to
The
build
James
something
Bond
like,
villain.
yeah, like to build Mecha Godzilla and to build that transport from Florida to Hong Kong.
Underground the whole way.
Underneath the ocean and underneath massive, you know, forms of land, the budget that it would take for that. If that's the case, why was Apex not a presence in the other two films?
Yeah, where'd they come
Absolutely.
from?
Right?
Yeah, where'd they come from out of nowhere? Yeah, it was the other films was all Monarch heavy. Monarch. We didn't hear anything about Monarch in this movie. It was just Apex. Like, where did
It's just
Monarch
Apex.
go?
Right.
Well, what would have been cool about Apex is that, and so Mechagodzilla has a few origins in the original, where once he was an alien robot, once humans built him. But I thought it would have been cool, what if Apex was made from the, you know, like the aliens that built Mechagodzilla in the original films. That would explain the high tech, everything, how they're able to build so fast. It would be a great way to bring in aliens and one day Space Godzilla.
And Planet X
Yeah,
Planet X,
and all that.
and
And
why
they touched-
Monster X is there anyway.
Right. They touched on that with Monster X in King of Monsters.
Yep.
Again, another time they dropped the ball. I mean, there's just so much here. There's so much potential here.
Well, yeah.
There's so many different storylines.
And like we said in a previous conversation again, it seems like the guy Adam Wingard, when he wrote this movie, he just wrote it from wherever he wanted to write from. Like, he didn't look at the last movie and go, how can I take some of this and really bring it in? All he brought in was the Millie Bobby Brown character and her father. You know
Pretty
what I'm
much.
saying? But as far as all that extra stuff that happened, they talked about Planet, Monster X and all that other stuff. None of that came into this movie. Like we said, Monarch barely came into the movie. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's like he just decided, I'm gonna write this my own way, and I'm gonna create another company called Apex, and you
Yeah.
know, it's just like he didn't really. I don't know if he just didn't care. You know what I'm saying? Or he just decided, screw it, I'm just going to do my own thing. And I'm surprised that nobody said anything to him. Like, no, we need to blend this, bro. Like, we did all this work on King of Monsters, and it actually didn't do bad. People enjoyed the movie overall. You know what I'm saying? So why not include that into the storyline of this next movie? I don't understand that.
Right.
And again, it goes back to what I was saying before. There's an inherent bias here. You know, I was glad that Godzilla actually won the fight ultimately because it's such a skewed film towards Kong. So the fact that that was in there, I appreciated. But the storytelling, the whole majority of the movie is going to lean towards Kong because I think this guy, again, he was yearning to do that sequel from the Peter Jackson days.
Yeah.
So he probably already had an idea in his mind about what he wanted to sort of proceed with, right? Which again, Chase brought up a brilliant point about dropping the ball and sort of that lineage from the movie and even from outer space. But also, what happened to the other Titans in King of Monsters?
Yeah.
That was an opportunity that was completely dropped, right? Now, in the beginning of the movie, the credits in the beginning credits, they're rolling. You see, you know, this monster defeated, that monster defeated, and then on the Kong side, that monster defeated. But why not give us more of those fights leading up to the main fight versus giving us, you know, superfluous, you know, human dialogue? And like you guys said, and I agree with, there's a lot of human characters that didn't need to be in this movie.
Right.
You could have had Kong's, you know, party.
Yeah.
You could have had that group in the movie bringing the story along while these other fights were going on.
Right.
We could have actually been seeing Godzilla defeat some of these monsters. And the
like
thing that frustrated...
WWE. Like,
Absolutely.
You know, how they have 28 wrestlers and then
like
they
a
just all
tournament.
fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, like a sort of monster battle royal. I mean, the thing that frustrated me also was Godzilla in the first two movies, the theme was that he was the balance.
Right.
Right? Godzilla's the balance. You know, that's the guy, I forgot his name, he was like, let them fight. You know, this is the balance. And after King of Monsters, at the end credits, it was, you know, Godzilla reigning over these monsters, his restoring the planet again. So he's keeping these monsters in line.
In check, yeah.
You could have had a situation where some of these monsters started doing their own thing, and Godzilla had to come and restore that balance as well, and have it out with those. So you could have had, this could really have been a spectacle of just a monsters going at it for most of the movie.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think a lot of it too. If you think about it, I think that in the big picture of it all, everybody creating this movie meant well. You can see that people have meant well, and let's just be honest. What they did really right with all the movies leading up to this is they really did good trying to build a intriguing backstory narrative. The subplot between the Hollow Earth, between where Godzilla came from in the King of Monsters that was underwater, and all the different
the Mayan Temple
texts of civilization. That's good story building there. That's good content. That's rich content. And there's a way to create all that together, but I think everyone got too excited too fast building this film, this current film, and trying to tie up all that information and trying to bring all of this stuff together to make it all work in fluidity. And that's what I think was genuinely good. They wanted to do that. It just wasn't executed as well as it could have been. There's some dropping of the balls, like we say. With the monster situation, like what you're talking about, Sean, you can't have Hollow Earth and show us all these different creatures that live within the Hollow Earth and try to make me as the viewer believe that Kong killed everybody and that Godzilla killed everybody and that they're the only two left remaining, when there's these portals to the surface everywhere, and you have an island that's a direct conduit to the Hollow Earth that's generating all these creatures on that island. That's bringing them through, because they even made that understanding that the ground in Skull Island was hollow and forest, and there's things coming through. So you've got a constant influx of creatures that can come out and be involved in this planet narrative of what's happening out there. They're not just all going to disappear. So, we didn't see, we're as a viewer know that. You should know that if you're watching these movies, So there's no excuse to get rid of the monsters. There's more of an excuse to have more monsters, and they can be throwaway monsters. They don't have to be, titans. They don't have to be strong things. They can add weight, just like you're trying to.
Scenes, not a whole movie.
Right. Just like you're trying to add actors and characters and humans to the mix, you add these monsters to the mix to give tension between this kind of environment above humans. There's the humans, and there's this ecosystem above humans that's been supposedly going on for centuries on the planet. So
you know what that hints at too, Graven? That these monsters have personalities.
Absolutely.
They have unique personalities and characteristics.
Right.
Now again, we're in fantasy world here.
Right. Correct.
So you could play on that.
Absolutely.
The same way we talked about earlier, how Godzilla and Kong sort of have this understanding between each other, and they could pick up on certain things with each other. You could play off that with the other animals. You could have other titans who are more benevolent, and you could have certain titans who are more malicious. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. You don't build a huge world like showing us that Kong has a lair, that his ancestors have a civilization in the Hollow Earth, and that there's a technology that's created there. You create all that, and you show us all that, and then you're trying to explain it away as nothing. Like, it's just that happened. I'm waiting for Kong to be honest with you, he's getting this. If you want to go fantasy on it, which is what I was hoping, a little kid in me was like, all right, he's got this axe. All right, bring on the Godzilla armor. Where are the Godzillas that were killed before here by his ancestors? And where's that weaponry? Let's see some scales. Let's see some bone. Let's see King Kong armor up to go against Godzilla.
King
you know
Kong
what I mean? And give him a fighting chance. That would have been cool. You know what I mean? I think it would have been great.
With Aquaman. No, you had King Kong go and find the Aquaman suit, the Kong suit made of old Godzilla hides.
It would be awesome. I'm sorry, man. Think about it. Primal character like that. they're trying to make me believe that he fashioned an axe. His ancestors fashioned an axe against the bones.
And it's a Godzilla scale.
You know, the Godzilla scale. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know. That's just
I want to, and I love those ideas, man. I mean, again, this was a fun movie. Still, I don't want to take away from the fact that it was fun. It was cool. Not to be taken too seriously. Again, this is the Bloody Nerd, so we have to get into these details, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that I've been hearing from other reviewers and people who've given their opinion of this movie is this is a better movie than King of Monsters, right? What I would like to say is this. I think people are getting lost in the fact that the sort of nostalgia and just the greatness of seeing Kong and Godzilla in one movie, that within itself is rewarding. But I think people are losing the fact that this movie has a lot more plot holes and a lot more missed opportunities than King of Monsters. And King of Monsters was a more well put together movie. Now, definite plot holes for sure. But you understood, and again, in my opinion, much more human scenes that I would have liked. Okay, and I had some problems with the fight choreography in King of Monsters too, but it was a movie that made more sense. I think a lot of people, and I've heard this as well, King Kong Skull Island. I think out of the 4 movies, that's the best movie of the 4.
Agree.
Simply and again, I'm Team Godzilla, and I'm admitting this, right? Because it's a fun movie. It had the least amount of plot holes, and you actually cared about some of the characters.
Yeah, like what Chase was saying, you actually cared.
Yeah, that one guy that was he was fighting World War II, and he got stranded on the island, and he ended up with the samurai sword. John C. Reilly, like he was a fun character. Mm-hmm. You wanted to see him back in his house watching the Cubs game at the end of the day, right? So again, don't insult me while you're entertaining me. Give me something fun to watch, but have me understand that, I actually care about some of the characters in this movie. I understand the fluidity between the scenes and what's going on. And I think that's why Skull Island, most people don't really have a problem with that movie.
Yeah.
Plus, you get to see the monsters and other creatures enough that you feel satisfied.
Absolutely. Kong's abilities are on full display in that movie.
Yeah, and even the ones that are secondary monsters in that environment, like the insects and the water buffalo, all that. Right. You feel like they fit. You feel like there's sympathy there. You feel like they're being affected by everything that's happening around them, even for a brief moment. And the humans being kind of put in this moment of grandeur and fear and horror, dealing with having to live with all this type of situations immediately on this island. And I think this is what happens. I think me and Rick's talked about this. This is what happens when you, unfortunately, and this is unfortunately Hollywood sometimes, and it is what it is. But it's what happens when you don't build stories together unified. When you have different directors involved and you have different content being created across the board, and then trying to put it all together. This kind of happened more, and I mean, this is a whole nother story, but this kind of happened more horrendously as an example with the latest Star Wars movies, where things are not paced together. They're chopped up, and then directors are coming in and writers are coming in and trying to piece them together and make some type of fluid story arc. And that's how you get the plot holes that you get, and that's how you get the issues that we're dealing with this film. Right. So that it happens, man. And it's just, I think this is unfortunately what affected these movies tremendously.
Well, like I told Sean, I think I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if this was one of those situations that used to happen back in old Hollywood a lot, when your contracts with you had a contract with the production company as an actor and a director. I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Wingard had to give a certain number of movies, like, because he's directing the new Thundercats movie that's coming out. Yeah. They also have him doing the Face Off reboot.
Oh, okay.
So he's rebooting Face Off, the movie. And I think, again, I wouldn't be surprised if he had to do. They were like, if you want Thundercats, we'll give you Thundercats, but you have to give us the Godzilla vs. Kong, Face Off, and maybe like another movie. And then if you give us those 3 movies, you know what I'm saying, then we'll give you Thundercats.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, because when you listen to him talk about the movies that he's doing and things that he's doing, he's got a hard on for Thundercats. He's like, that's something that he's been wanting to do since he was a kid. And so these other movies, I wouldn't be surprised, man. I just would not be surprised. It was like, all right, cool, you give us these movies, and we'll let you have Thundercats. Right. You know, like who? Listen, I loved and appreciated the original Face Off. Who in the fuck cares about a sequel? Who wants to reboot the Face Off? Like seriously, like there's not even a need for a sequel to that movie unless the movie's literally going to have Nick Cage and John Travolta in it.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are in talks to come back for Face Off too.
If Nick Cage and John Travolta are in it, then that's fine. But you know what I'm saying? What are we going to do? Take their faces off again? Like, are we going to do the same shit again? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it was like Face Off 2 and it was those two characters came back to fight each other, but there was no face switching, you know, then okay. I mean, the best part of that movie was those two characters. Was John Travolta and Nick Cage. That was the best part of that whole fucking movie. Without them, I don't give a fuck. I really don't care. You know what I'm saying? But as far as rebooting it, like, why? Who cares? Like, no one cares.
That's just the world we live in right now, brother. Unfortunately,
it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick that can only be used once because that's what made the movie interesting.
That's what made it interesting.
Yeah. You know? Right. So, I would say that it's not needed. I would rather see National Treasure 3 than that.
Which they're doing anyway.
Right. I'm just joking with it. Yeah.
The last thing on my list of issues, and then I don't know, at one point, Rick, you want to get into the completely ridiculous. The last thing on my list that I would say is I really had a problem with the fight choreography with the monsters. I feel like Kong's abilities are always on full display because he's scrappy. He has to use what's around him. I mean, there was one time he was waiting for Godzilla on the top of a building with a crane, right?
The crane in his hand. That shit was dope.
You know, so I mean, listen. While I like to see the monsters go at it, consistently between King of Monsters and this movie, I feel like Godzilla's abilities are underutilized.
Oh yeah.
And not really brought to the full spectrum. And I feel like Kong was on full display in this movie. I did have an issue with that. And another thing they dropped the ball on is radioactive Godzilla. You can't introduce that to us in King of Monsters. I mean, that's how he defeated Monster Zero or whatever. And not have that at some point in this movie. Did he just lose that ability? Was that a one-time affair?
That's the same thing as Scarlet Witch. They can't bring that out. If they brought that out, the movie would have been over.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like if they showed all of Godzilla's powers in this, Kong would have stood no chance. Because once Godzilla went, atomic and started building the buildings, Kong would have been a skeleton.
Yeah, that's true. But even when he was getting his butt kicked by Mechagodzilla, like nothing.
No, okay, that I agree with because he got his ass handed to him by Mechagodzilla. It made no sense that Zilla didn't get angrier and let something happen because Mechagodzilla was laying the smackdown on Godzilla for a hot minute, like before. But I think this is something that Sean brought up to me in the conversation. I don't know if you heard it from the director or something about making Godzilla like a shark in the water.
I did like that aspect of it. Yes, he said when he thought of Godzilla, he thinks of Jaws.
He thinks of Jaws.
So in a lot of the scenes when Godzilla, comes on the scene, he has the fins out of the water, and
But I would also say that he treated Godzilla that way through the whole movie.
Through the whole movie,
even outside of the water, he treated Godzilla as the shark in the water, and King Kong was the human having to figure out how to beat the shark in the water.
Right.
Because Kong, the whole time, Zilla had his head down, and he was just searching through Hong Kong trying to find Kong. You know what I'm saying? And Kong was running around like, I need a crane from here. He took the circular part of the frisbee off the building like a frisbee and shit. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Like Predator.
So it was like Kong was the human in this monster movie.
Absolutely.
And he treated Zilla like the mindless monster that was just like, I'm going to kill you, and that's all it was.
Well, the scene when you see Mechagodzilla grab Godzilla by the tail and just whirl him? Why couldn't we had Kong do that? Kong show his upper strength and just grab Godzilla by the tail and just start throwing him through the Hong Kong, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they gave
I mean-
Mechagodzilla scenes that Kong could have used.
Well, in the fight between the two of them, yeah. Yeah.
I think, again, I slightly disagree with you, Chase, because I do think, I mean, that would have been cool to see, but I think Kong got so many opportunities to hit back and defend himself against Godzilla. Like, if you go back and watch those scenes again, I have a problem with the fight choreography. It could have been more even. Now, we know Godzilla's more powerful, but we could have seen a much better choreographed fight between the two. And I think King Kong was, I mean, he hit him in the face with the axe. Like, he hit him with so many different things. And there was only that the third time they actually fought, and this is after Godzilla regained consciousness, right after being laid out by the axe. That was the only time really that Godzilla got to lay his hands on him. He scratched his chest up. Yeah. He put his foot on his chest. I mean, he could have actually used the atomic breath and just melted his whole head off, right, at that point. And he chose, he chose to say, hey, you lost. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? But I think that, and that's why I brought up this point, Kong's fighting abilities were on full display. So to add him whirling Godzilla by the tail, that would have just infuriated me. Because I don't feel like Godzilla had enough opportunity to show his fighting skills. And the amount of, I mean, again, you have the whole collection of Godzilla movies. All the little crazy things that he used to do, I mean, and some of it was ridiculous, like, sailing on his tail and jump
with the double foot jump kick. But
jump kicking people and stuff like that. That's a little crazy.
It's like another thing is if you guys watch Family Guy at all?
Used to.
Have before, yeah.
Well, so there's a scene that reminds me of Godzilla vs. Kong when Stewie walks into Lois's bedroom and says "Mom" over and over until Lois just screams at him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you take the fight scene, Kong keeps messing with Godzilla until Godzilla just yells and just kicks Kong to the ground and just screams at him. Mm-hmm. Like, that was that whole final scene.
Well, no, that's exactly what I was about to get to. Exactly what it was. The whole scene reminded me of that movie with The Rock and Sean William Scott. The rundown. There's a scene where The Rock is fighting that little kid that used to play sidekick.
Ernie Reyes Jr. Played in Turtles too.
Yeah, where the Ernie Reyes Jr. is just running around with all this energy. You know what I'm saying? And The Rock is just standing there. It's one of those situations. That's what it was. Godzilla was The Rock, and Kong was the Ernie Reyes character. Yeah. And it was
swinging from vines and stuff.
Kong is just running around, Zilla, and then finally when Zilla got his hands on him, he's like, and threw his ass on the ground and stomped on his chest. You know what I'm saying? Like, hold still, you little bastard. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he finally got his ass on the ground. That's kind of what I feel like the whole thing was. It was like, Kong was running around, and I expected that. But when we talked about this before the movie came out, I expected that that was the only way the fight could happen. Kong was going to have to outrun him.
Hide and seek.
And stay out of his range.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's the only way they could fight each other.
He was going to have to become Dutch.
They can't go nose to nose. There's no way they can go nose to nose. Yeah. So.
Well, somebody mentioned this before, and this is getting on my profoundly ridiculous list. But since we mentioned it, I think it's a good segue to get into the ridiculous stuff. I think the fight between Mechagodzilla and Godzilla was completely one-sided.
Yeah,
I don't know. And again, maybe, I could lean on some of... Yeah, it was a little too much. The fact that Godzilla was getting ragdolled the way he was. Now, we knew that both of them were going to have to team up against a force that was, too strong. But again, if we go back to Batman vs. Superman, they had that fight, and then Doomsday was introduced into the picture. And then everybody had to sort of, But that fight, I believe, again, even though Doomsday was so powerful, it was a better choreographed fight.
Yeah.
Right? It seems like it seemed to me like Kong and Zilla were just these fleas on Mechagodzilla. And, I would beg, ask this question to Chase, like, with your knowledge of the previous, Mechagodzillas and those movies and stuff. Number one, I disagree with Graven slightly. I didn't like the design of Mechagodzilla. I would have liked to see Mechagodzilla mirror more of how Godzilla looked.
Mhm.
Like more of the dinosaur kind of look of Godzilla. So I felt like the design was a little ridiculous. But just to ask you, Chase, like I know that Godzilla was sort of outgunned because Mechagodzilla had all this technology. He had the missiles, he had the guns, he had all these things he could do. But was it that Godzilla outsmarted Mechagodzilla eventually, and he was able to defeat him by himself for some of those movies?
And the original, the only reason Mechagodzilla was somewhat Godzilla's equal is because he was from space. He was from a different technology. I meant later they retconned him and humans built him using future technology. But Godzilla smarted him out pretty easy. Godzilla kind of lost on purpose in certain ways to kind of understand how Mecha worked and then obliterate him. So Mechagodzilla really doesn't stand a chance unless he has more people helping.
Right.
And the fact that this Mechagodzilla won, and I know Rick was talking about it a couple of days ago, how this is Mechagodzilla 1. Like if this was the humans' version of Mechagodzilla 4, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's a test model, and the fact that he's strong enough.
Yeah.
And they don't explain how powerful Hollow Earth is to even give Mechagodzilla that power.
Right.
Yeah. Again.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
again, with the plot holes and not explaining anything, they never tell us. Okay, how many times did they build Mechagodzilla until they got it right? You know what I'm saying? As far as we're led to believe, this is the first thing they built. And,
it was just a matter of getting that power source.
And it was just a
he
matter
kept
of
shutting down.
It's just a matter he kept overheating and shutting down. So now they get this power source, and now not only is he able to not shut down, but he's stronger than Godzilla. Like it was like
much stronger.
My thought process was like if I created clone to Superman. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a clone is one thing, but if I created a robotic Superman, who's to say that I'm going to get it right out the box the first time around? I mean, it's just one of those things. I know there's going to be people who be like, but who cares? It's like, give me a break. But, I mean, it does make sense. They could have easily said, we've been working on this prototype for so many years now. This is our fourth version. You know what I'm saying? And we've gone through so many stress tests, and we've studied Godzilla's fighting style over the years since he's been killing all the other Titans. We've studied his fighting style. We've taken, stats on him, and we've found a way. They could have showed scenes where they had fucking Apex on the scene with fights, and like after the fight was over, they're picking up shit like fucking enemy Titans' blood, or so many little things.
Explaining the science.
Yeah, explaining how they figured out how to make this thing so much more powerful than Godzilla right out the gate.
But another thing is, Mechagodzilla isn't Mechagodzilla in this movie. It's Ghidorah from the original. It's not even Mechagodzilla. That frustrates me as a Godzilla fan because Mechagodzilla is amazing. We didn't get Mechagodzilla.
Some version of.
We got if Mecha Godzilla and Ghidorah had a little off baby.
Yeah, that was one of Graven's talking points in the beginning. The Mecha Ghidorah. Since we're in the ridiculous, the realm of ridiculousness, that was the other thing. It's like, so we got this huge Ghidorah bone skull sitting in a room.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Brain.
There's no brain. There's no nerves or anything. You just have these tubes plugged up to a bone. Yeah. And what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on in here. It just looks cool. You know what I'm saying?
That's edging on the insulting side, really.
Yeah, it just looks cool. Like this would be great if it was an episode of fucking Power Rangers on Nicktoons and shit, Nickelodeon. But this is not, Nickelodeon. This is a movie for adults, and you got this piece of bone, and you just put tubes to it, and that means they were able to use it because he had some psionic powers. The psionic powers have to do with his brain, not his bones.
Right.
Well, what about another thing? I don't know. So the main Japanese male in the other two Godzilla movies that said "Let them fight."
Yeah, the guy that killed himself.
Was his name Takashi or something? Was his name?
Yeah,
something like that. But I don't want to butcher the name.
Right.
his son is the one controlling Mechagodzilla, and the fact that we get no story with him. I only know that from looking on IMDb. And they ruined his whole character from the two Godzilla movies because he was for Godzilla. And you just have his son doing something for no reason because we get no explanation.
Well, to ultimately destroy Godzilla.
That's even more insulting, though. That's even more insulting because his father gave his life to save Godzilla.
Right.
There's a lot of story there. He could have been mad his father gave his life for Godzilla, and that's why
that
he
could have been a whole 5-minute flashback while he's there.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of information there they just didn't even bother to get into, which that's even more insulting.
Well, they show you too in the beginning scenes when they're trying to recruit the first guy, who wrote the book on Hollow Earth. There's some aspects there where you're like, wait a minute, this is an intelligent guy because he's finishing his sentences. He's like, oh, you mean this? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more of that character that could have been, brought to light. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know that was supposed to be the guy's son.
Exactly.
I didn't know it until I researched.
That's another ball dropped right there.
Yeah.
The other thing on my list of completely ridiculous was pouring liquid into the computer.
Oh yeah, that part.
Yeah. It's a Family Guy moment.
Yeah, we need to do something. Godzilla's getting his ass kicked. What do we do?
I'm really getting tired of these characters who can, number one, they're afraid of their own shadow, right? Mm. But the other thing is, it's sort of like, they just happen to be around a computer. Again, this is a high security facility.
Right.
Most people can't even break into another person's laptop. Okay.
Correct.
You're in this high security, like giant mega computer frame, and they could just grab a keyboard and just start trying to, tap into whatever. Like, I'm tired of that trope. Let's come up with something else. Let's do something different here. Mm-hmm.
And there was a way a line that he went to camp for a little hacker club, but he failed at it.
Yeah, something like that. And the fact of how they got the liquid to the scene, so they used something that was really personal and dramatic. Like, the conspiracy theorist guy, his character lost his wife, and that was a gift from his wife, and he was carrying it with him. And he mentioned something that the moment you see this empty is the day that I gave up.
Give up. Yeah.
So he keeps it full of a fifth of something, right? Mm-hmm. And then for him to remember that in that moment, oh yeah, let's grab the liquid and just pour it out. I mean, it was cheap. It was cheap to.
Yeah.
The boy should have got it in his butt kick.
Yeah, I mean, they again, like Graven said, they used the conspiracy theory guy as a really lame,
cartoon of himself.
He could have been somebody that wasn't a janitor or some nonsense. He could have been somebody higher up in Apex, and it would have made sense then at that moment that he sat down at the keyboard and started pulling up because he is a programmer or he's somebody that's worked on the machine.
That would have been more believable. Absolutely.
Yeah, like he could have been somebody that worked on the machine. They've done this in movies and they do this in the government nowadays anyway, where they have multiple groups of people working on a project, but they don't know what project they're working on.
Correct.
They're all working on different pieces, but they don't know how those pieces come together. And that's how they keep it compartmentalized and keep it secret. That could have been part of what happened. He could have been working on a project, not realizing it had anything to do with Mechagodzilla until that moment.
Or better yet,
he still had access,
and he still was able to get in and have access.
Or better yet, Dr. Lind, who was the author of the Hollow Earth type novel that was in the beginning, this could have been one of his peers that were working with him because of the book not being a success, if you will, and needing to do more research about the theories and ideas of this. And this character could have been something that was building that narrative around Dr. Lind even being involved. And so that was connecting patterns with businesses and people and companies researching all this data to create something, and Apex being the singular point of concern or this major, major thing. It's easy to see that this guy would have been infiltrating maybe their networks because he had all that understanding, and he was looking at all the different theories with his podcast, and he was a way him delineating information to people while also maybe supporting the doctor in his research. after the failed release of this book to try to recredit his name. There could have been a lot of that involved, and would have eventually pieced together the narrative of this villain type character even talking to him. Now, I see that you're researching this. I see that you're into this, and I think there's a way you could have blended all that together a little better and built a stronger structure for this conspiracy type character that would have made sense for the payoff in the end. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Even Josh could have been involved in the same thing because he seemed like he was involved in some of those things as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, we're just making these things up. We know this is not the movie. These are things that are the what if, what would have been, what would have been cool, and we get it. We've got to review the movie on its own merits, and we're trying to do that. And not everyone's going to agree, but I think we've had some good talking points with everything. I think if they would have followed maybe the Pacific Rim 1 game plan, we could have had a more robust story here with these Titans fighting each other and with Mechagodzilla. I think it would have been interesting to see that type of idea kind of transverse. So they could have done their homework with that. And they could have had a lot of other movies out there that kind of show this type of narrative and just maybe pull from that and build a story around it.
It's about making connections. It's about connecting the pieces together. You have this MonsterVerse, 3 movies in. This is the culmination of that. And they could have connected the pieces to all those movies here. And I think that's the point that everybody's trying to make.
Right.
And I will be remiss if I don't mention my last point on the completely ridiculous list, which is, as Rick likes to call, the text message sent from Godzilla to King Kong, where Godzilla bores a hole from the surface of the Earth down to Hollow Earth.
Right.
Now, the voyage that it took for these people to reach Hollow Earth and for Godzilla to just kind of dig a hole like Armageddon straight to Hollow Earth, and then for them to be actually yelling back at each other. I mean, there would have been such a shift in the Earth's climate and topography and all of that for Godzilla to put a hole that deep into the Earth. I mean, that was profoundly.
You're cracking the whole planet open.
It's called cause and effect. You can't do something and not have any fallout from that thing. You dig a hole straight to the center of the Earth and not have any fallout. You know what I'm saying, from that happening. Other than the fact that now you've just given Kong a slip and slide to get back to Hong Kong.
Pretty much. You needed a way to get him from Hollow Earth back to the surface of the Earth.
It would have been cooler if all of a sudden before Godzilla just blew a hole, you see him walk to some area and open some hole that's been there. Because remember, we saw where there are different holes around Earth. And what if they just showed there already was a hole over there Godzilla could have used?
I mean, this is kind of the problem with the way the story moves from the beginning to end. I mean, it almost makes the whole storyline not make sense. They should have never went to Hollow Earth until the end of the movie.
I agree.
Because the fact that they go to Hollow Earth, the moment that happens, it fucks the whole story up. The moment they take Kong to Hollow Earth, though, I was watching the movie going, how the fuck are they gonna go? How is this movie gonna end? Like they went through this whole elaborate process of going through this wormhole, you know what I'm saying, and then coming out the wormhole into this abyss of darkness. And then plopping through another wormhole. And then when that comes out the other end, gravity shifts. And they went through this elaborate fucking thing. And then they're falling into Middle Earth. So how the fuck are they going to get back now? Like, you went through all of that, and now it's just, okay.
Again, it was lazy. It was really lazy.
Let's just have them dig a hole, and everybody's just going to
Godzilla digs a hole, and Kong is able to come back. It's lazy.
Not to mention,
and Godzilla lights up his own weapon of destruction. Like that doesn't make sense either.
And on top of it, let's not forget that the whole narrative in the beginning of the movie was that Dr. Lin's brother, he was behind all this writing because his brother died in the process. And he was mourning him. Yeah. And I think it was his brother, if I'm correct.
It was his brother.
Yeah, so he dies in the process, and that's because of this gravity well, and that they need something special to get them through. But I'm supposed to believe that Kong just dropped through it as an organic creature and did not get completely destroyed by going through this gravity well and his body completely being imploded or smashed. From the beginning of the movie, we know we have to suspend disbelief a little bit, but you're telling us one thing and then doing another thing, and that's the big issue here.
Yeah, and I'm willing to believe that it's possible if you explain it to me. Explain to me that only the Titans can go through the well.
Right.
Because of their body size, their mass, something
their DNA
allows them to go through the well and the gravity not harm them. But when his brother and them went through the well with no ships, with no special equipment, it crushed him. That's what he literally said. His brother went through the well and it crushed him. So,
they could have explained it like Pacific Rim, where only the creature's DNA structure can get through the rim to their world. And maybe they needed the Titan's DNA. They could have explained it like that, pretty simple.
Yeah.
And that's why they made Kong go first.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because that was the other thing. I think me and Sean talked about this. That was the other thing. They were like, we need you to take us to the Hollow Earth. They already knew where it was. They built a base around the entrance.
Yeah.
They knew exactly where to go. His brother tried it. The only thing they needed was the ships that the guy built, and they got the ships. And once they got the ships, why did they need Kong?
They had the ships, and you mean to tell me that human beings, right, scientists, discoverers, they built these ships that could withstand, because that's how they sold, the guy who lost his brother, that's how they sold him on it. These ships could withstand that. And now you're meaning to tell me that they're waiting for this whole enterprise to, for Kong and everything to get down there? They would have already explored that territory. Yeah. I'm sorry. They would have already been... That would have already been tested ground. Now, if they couldn't find anything, they could have come back and said, hey, we need you because we tried to explore this territory and we don't know what we're looking for.
We're ill-equipped. We need Kong to help us there as a bodyguard.
But they would have been down there already.
And this also brings into here another thing. All these things could have been simplistically explained to the viewer.
Oh, absolutely.
As well as explain the narrative of the story and push the story through with one simple thing. Let the monkey talk. Let the gorilla talk. Let the little deaf girl speak to this creature. Let us know. Have her explain to him, look, Kong, this is the stakes. This is what's going on. We're having a problem here. They need to get through here. They've tried and they've failed many times. Is there any way that you can give us help through this and be our protector? You've protected us for so many years through all the stuff that you're dealing with, and you've protected me. Take us through this. It's going to be scary. You may have family there. We may figure out where you came from. Let's give it a shot and let King Kong actually emote and say, you know what, maybe I should, maybe I need to, and I'm doing this for you because I love you and I care about you and I want to protect you. And then, of course, if there's a double cross or some weird thing going to happen once he gets there, then we'll figure it all out. But it could have brought all that through. There's just little. It doesn't have to be a big exposition. It could just be small amounts of information that gets you, the viewer. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing here. Take me on this journey. Let's follow Kong. Godzilla is just an addition.
The second thing you said, let the monkey talk. But the second thing I would say, just have better dialogue.
I agree.
I mean, it's not that difficult to just write better dialogue between the human characters. The human characters are supposed to take us through the storyline because. Yeah, these Titans, they can't necessarily. I mean, we discovered that Kong could sign, but for the most part, these Titans aren't going to be sitting back having a dialogue with each other or anything like that.
No, not at all.
That's what
we
the
don't
human
want that. We want them to fight.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just write better stories. Just have better dialogue. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think that about sums it up. I mean, again, I'm sure. Listen, man. If you like the movie, you like the movie. If you didn't like the movie, you didn't like the movie. We're just trying to bring a little logic to the critiquing of a movie. There's a thing when you're in this game of movie critic, and critiquing a movie. There's ways to do this, and. That's one of the things about right now, the YouTube, what we call the Wild West of YouTube right now. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has a YouTube channel. Everybody's being a critic, and that's fine. You do what you want to do. But if there's no, logic to the way you do this, then it's a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta. Sean himself said he has a bias because he's a Zilla fan. But even though he's a Zilla fan, he's able to critique the movie. You know what I'm saying? Based off of certain logical things like story arc and plot lines and script writing and things of that nature. And these are the things that a lot of people nowadays just throw out the window based solely off of their bias for a character or for a movie. And then you got the popcorn movie where people are like, I just don't want to think about anything. I just want to shove snacks in my face, and who gives a fuck? Which is fine. If you don't want to care, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? But a movie still has to be graded in a certain way. Like these movies are still put up to be graded. So that's all we're doing. We're just putting our 2 cents in, our 5 cents in on what we thought, our thoughts about the movie and its likes and dislikes.
Well, let me just say this, Rick, before you end. My final thoughts of this movie is, I think it's still a fun movie. I think it's enjoyable for anybody to watch, even if you know nothing about the characters, even if you didn't see the 3 previous films. I do think it could have been a lot better. And that's what we're all getting at. It could have been something really special, even if it's a popcorn movie. It could have been one of those like really memorable, movies that has aged, beyond its years. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but the last thing I'll say is, have a plan. And it's obvious to me with these 4 movies that was jumbled. They went from film to film without a consistent plan. Godzilla 2014 tried to be a serious, dramatic movie. And you had a good cast in that movie as well. Then they heard the complaints about, and Kong Skull Island came out, and they tried to introduce you to this new Kong. He was bigger and everything like that, and that sort of had its own sort of feel to it. And then they heard the complaints from 2014 that you only saw Godzilla for like 3 minutes of the movie. They said, okay, King of Monsters, let's give the people what they want. They had a whole bunch of monsters in that movie too. Again, I feel like they dropped the ball, and they could have showed us much more. But now you bring us to Kong versus Godzilla, and that is a uniquely King Kong-based movie, and presents Godzilla in a completely different narrative than you introduced. So this MonsterVerse, these 4 movies, it was very mixed, and they could have had a plan from start to finish how they're going to introduce and lay this out, and it could have been a much more enjoyable experience with less plot holes.
Yeah, it was like the Thor of monster movies, the way these 4 movies came out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and that seems to be the running joke of a lot of Hollywood right now, is people don't seem to have a plan of what they're doing from start to finish. This movie series from start to finish was definitely them reacting to the fans. Like all this whole thing from day one, the first movie they put out, and then the fans screamed and yelled, and they're like, okay, let's change it. And then they made the next movie, and then the fans screamed and yelled, okay, let's change it to this. And that's all this was them being reactionary to the fans the whole time around. And
that's true.
Never having a set plan to begin with from day one.
Yeah, that's true. Because even 2014 Godzilla was a reaction from the 2000 Zilla movie that, they presented some new lizard-looking thing. But even as 2014, they wanted to get the look and feel of Godzilla right. So even that was a reaction to the complaints, which, again, that Zilla movie was probably one of the most disappointing movies I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean,
these are
because the marketing for it was brilliant.
The marketing was brilliant,
but the movie itself was disastrous.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Gravy?
These are focus group films.
Yeah,
that's what these are. This is what you get when you deal with focus groups. This and using the fans' reactions as a build, and you can always see when that's going to happen. Where they change and everything. So that's what happens a lot of times.
It's great to listen to the fans to a point. You know what I'm saying? But it's also better to have an idea what you want to do. Nowadays, man, it seems like Hollywood is so gun shy to put their money into anything. They want to wait to see if it's going to pay off first. I don't see what the problem is about building a 4-movie story arc or 3-movie story arc and just at least having the outline down. No one's saying just because you did that you have to make all 3 movies. You can still make an outline story arc for 3 movies, and then the first movie could bomb, and then you just decide to scrap it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But then if the first movie does good, you're ready to go. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Like, and you can make small tweaks here and there.
Yeah, you can make small tweaks if you need to. But at least you have a thorough story arc that goes through the whole process. Just do it in the beginning. But for some reason, it's like, no, we don't want to waste that money. Let's just make a one-off. And then if it does good, we already know. If a movie does good, they're going to make a sequel.
Yeah.
That's not if the movie does good, oh hell yeah, we're gonna greenlight a sequel. That's just automatically the case. So
Yeah.
just start with the idea of making it a 3-movie franchise thing. Just do that.
Yeah.
I don't see what the big deal is.
Well, this is where they can take a book out of comics, since apparently this is the big norm now. As we know, superhero genre and book movies are the norm nowadays. This is where they can take a book and page out of that and say, look, comics have been doing this for years. They've been doing sequential periodical stories where they tie things together with small issue regular series runs where they have a story arc that carries over multiple issues into one compendium. And there's some books that do it phenomenally, and there's others that of course don't. But I think if Hollywood really wanted to start adapting that ideology a little bit, I think that they would come out with better product.
All right.
Putting it on the go.
Cool, guys. Well, like I said, I think we've said everything that we need to say about this one.
For sure.
Please join the conversation. Hit the comments down below. We always want to hear what you guys have to say. As long as you leave your emotions at the door. This is called the Bloody Nerd for a reason. We like to get down and dirty here and get into the nitty gritty. Come back, check us out more. We're gonna do more talks. We're gonna do more reviews. We're gonna do more movie punditry. Like I say before, check out in the description box below. I will definitely link everybody's information. Look out for Graven. Look out for Sean's information in the bottom, and we'll put Mr. Chase down there at the bottom. He's the young buck. He's coming up now. He's getting his feet wet. So we'll make sure and link his stuff down below. Go check him out and everything that he's doing. He's a budding film director himself. So we'll get you guys to see some of this. Maybe we can do it. We'll get Chase to do a movie. We'll come on here and talk about one of his flicks, man.
There you go.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to give that a go. I mean, Chase only does horror movies, which is like for me, but whatever. But
I'll hold your hand.
yeah, thank you, Xander. All right, you guys are good. Any last words? Any last words before we head out?
I think we're good. I appreciate the opportunity. I thank you guys listening and giving us the option to talk with you about what's real in the world of the Bloody Nerd in movies.
The Bloody Nerd in movies. I like it. All right, guys. We're going to end it here, and we'll come back to you guys soon. Keep a lookout. Peace.